Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here once again, and I am here today to talk about, surprise, surprise, Don't Make Waves. I am here to finish the analysis because, frankly, I am tired of this movie. I am absolutely sick and tired of thinking about, I gotta do Don't Make Waves video. It's like, this movie is just one giant pain. And I'm getting it over with. Okay? This movie, it did not get better the second time. In fact, it got worse. I mean, I was feeling much worse on the day that I originally watched it and reviewed it, but even so that I'm feeling a little bit better than that day, this movie is still that bad that it's just so weak and paper thin, and I really feel like they could have done a lot better. And I have to just wonder, like, what was the point of the book? Like, it would be interesting. That's why I said it'd be really good to read the book, because it's hard to see the point of this story. It's hard to see a meaning behind it. So much of the movie is hampered by bad dialogue, bad character, weak plot, weak comedy. And I'd just like to know, like, what is the essence of this story? Because the essence for me is just BS. Like, this book, it's about Muscle Beach, kinda. It's got pretty people. It takes place in California. Let's do that. It doesn't feel like they had a story and they were like, this would be a really good story, and all the deep meanings of this and that. I kind of felt like, and it's funny too, because, even the book sounds kind of like Licorice Pizza, or like a P.T. Anderson movie, where everything is very casual. It's a lot more character based and random and stuff, and realistic. And then there's got to be like some dramatic stuff woven into the comedy. Well, back to the analysis part. So still, I do not like the movie. I can't even remember what I reviewed it, but I would still give it whatever I reviewed it. So the first thing I noticed was that this is a part of the code. So one of the characters, he asks the main character, what are you, a paid escort, a dancer, a hairdresser? That's the last word that he says, hairdresser. And so that would give you another hint as to what this movie is about, and to, the relevance of saying that, and, just indicating to the people watching what they really mean by the making of this movie. And then another thing, I heard the story about, and see, now, once again, it's like every time I do a video. So I heard the story of behind the scenes about the skydiver filming, and it's pretty interesting and pretty telling. It's a really kind of frustrating story. So what happened was, they filmed a bunch of footage, and none of it was usable. It was not filmed with Bob Bucor, and they did not figure out that it was usable because conveniently the testing room where they could watch the dailies was being used for Dr. Zhivago. So they literally could not test the footage for the daily sequences filmed with the skydiving, and none of it was able to be put into the movie for some reason. So they had to hire Bob Bucor for reshoots. And they emphasize expensive reshoots. So he basically had to reshoot the entire sequence for them. He had to do all that because of this very odd convenience where they were just, they were filming crap. They didn't even know it or care. And so that's very convenient. And then I would also like to point out that Bob was born in Texas, just like her. And that's another thing that they like to do. And so I would also like to point out the birthday. I decided to do the number symbolism, the birthday and the death day symbolism. He was born on October 7th, 1933. And all those numbers add up to 6. And then his death date is July 28, 1966. Those numbers add up to 3. In total, everything adds up to 9. And so that's another purposeful thing. And I'd also like to point out that, we were talking about how behind the scenes, year before this movie came out, or around this movie when it came out, is when she went to England to make Fearless Vampire Killers, and then she left Jay for the other guy. And it's very interesting because in this movie, her character is kind of presented like a vampire. She's presented as this person who has the ultimate vitality, the ultimate, she's just perfect in every way. She's 100% healthy. She's like a supermodel. There's nothing that's ever going to be wrong with her. And just the way that she's presented, it reminds me a lot of like a vampiric bride type of character. And there's this moment which I wasn't even paying attention to when I originally watched the movie. There's a moment where she leans in to give the main character mouth to mouth, and it's very similar to moments in vampire movies when the vampire leans in to bite their victim. And again, that could just be coincidence, but I thought it was interesting how she's kind of framed like a vampire in this movie. And then, of course, it's also reference to the fact that in Fearless Vampire Killers, spoiler alert, the twist at the end of the movie is that she's already a vampire, and that the main character saved her for nothing. And so this movie's kind of like a transition into that. You could even connect Eye of the Devil and say that, that movie was, she's in a castle. This movie, she's a vampire. Next movie, confirmed. So I thought that was interesting. Lastly, before I just talk a little bit about the plot, I guess, like I try to, there was some very interesting symbolism in the opening credits sequence. This was another thing I was not paying attention to because I was like, I don't need to watch this. It's opening credits with titles and stuff. I don't need to obsessively watch that. So, we are thrust into farmland as the main character drives across the country. I did think it was interesting, too, that this whole opening sequence is basically him driving across the entire United States. And I thought that it was interesting that there's no reason... That's the weirdest thing about this movie, is there's no reason for him to even be in California. Like, he's just randomly there. He doesn't have any other connections. He's just there. Like, he just comes there, he drives up to this cliff, and then that's when the movie begins. It's like, there's no reasoning. Like, why did they take out that whole reasoning? Like, it was perfect. But anyways, we see a cow amongst other cows, and they're in front of a farm, and then this main cow, he has an R branded on his rear end. And it's symbolizing, how the producer, Rancidhoff, how he owns all these actors. Because, I know that that's a trademark thing. But there's really no reason to put an R on this cow other than to, make a joke, symbolize that, all these cows, all these actors are owned by Rancidhoff. Even further making this obvious, the image we see before the cow picture, keep in mind that this is all purposefully placed in certain places, like the order that they place these pictures, it's all purposeful. Even on like a surface level of just, they're talking about like California and how cool it is, and then they'll show a picture of a woman in her bikini. It's like, that's purposeful, This is the same type of purposeful symbolism. So, they have a picture of Sharon in front of a farm, and who knows where this picture is even from, because, like, I don't think I've ever seen this picture before, and so I think they took it purposefully for this movie. And so right after they show her in front of this farm, that's when they show the cows. And the main one with the letter R branded on it. So there you go. That's very, very obvious symbolism right there. Anyways, in terms of the plot, it's actually even worse, because he was planning on doing this scheme with Malibu before I even thought he was going to do it. There's this part 30 minutes, 40 minutes into the movie where her and her boyfriend come over, and Harry, he takes in this huge refrigerator, and the main character, he tells him, you look kind of weak, or you look kind of drained of energy. That's another vampire thing. And the guy gets really, really worried, because he's like, I have this California Big Boy contest coming up, and he's like, I can't look like that at all. Like, what's going on? And then the other friend was, of course, the one talking about how sex weakens people and makes them lose their strength or whatever BS. Well, he was, in saying that he looked weak, he was already instituting some sort of a plan to get at his girlfriend. And so it was like, before he even went the extra mile and got the astrologer to do that lie, he already did that just simple little comment that made him think, oh shit, am I weak? Am I drained of energy? Another thing I'd like to point out that's really interesting, and something that's kind of, it's kind of like another indicator of the vampire movie coming up next month in May, which I'm excited about reviewing that movie, because I can't wait to finally call it a piece of trash. Because I used to be so mad about that movie. I wanted to make a sequel so badly, because of how it was like, okay, this movie's okay, It's not what I expected, and then the ending is just like a big fu, and the ending just pissed me off completely. So what was I talking about? Okay, so the majority of Fearless Vampire Killers, well, okay, the whole movie takes place in the winter. It's all there's snow everywhere, which I thought was kind of a cool aesthetic choice. There's not a lot of vampire stories that I can think of that take place in the winter time, so that's a plus for the movie. Now I'm saying good things about it. Well, the Don't Make Waves starts off with kind of this wintry environment, and then they go into the west, and that's where it becomes sunny and hot and nice. And I think maybe even the titles might have been like Drenched in Snow or something. Like, I can't remember. I could probably double check right now, but yeah. So, another thing to talk about with this movie is the fact that another vampiric comparison, I should say, is, and I never even thought about this, is that Sharon is this skydiver character, and that's very similar to how vampires, they can fly, turn into vampire bats, fly all over the place. And I thought it was really interesting the way that this whole parachuting sequence played out, because it was almost like they were saying what was going to happen in real life. Keep in mind, none of this stuff was in the book. This parachuting shit, this shit with, what happens is he falls out of this helicopter while she is only supposed to be making this high jump. And so he is free falling, and she has to catch him and take him to the rescue. And that was all just put into this movie. That was not in the book. And so I thought it's another interesting thing. And then the ending, too, another vampiric comparison, would be that the hold that she has on all these men. It seems like every man, when they look at her, she kind of hypnotizes them. They do a couple of these shots up close, and she just has these piercing eyes that could hypnotize you like a vampire could as well. You think about the vampire stare. And in particular, her boyfriend, her ex-boyfriend, when he comes back, I never even thought of the fact that, throw away the fact that it is funny that you think he's going to beat him up, and then he's just like, why did you do that? That wasn't a nice thing to do. Just throw that away. And think about this. The way that he acted is very similar to somebody being under hypnosis treatment, under hypnosis in general. The way that he just comes in there. I mean, keep in mind, this house is about to fall off of a cliff. And somehow, this ex-boyfriend ropes himself into the place, climbs up and in there like a fucking George of the fucking jungle. And then he is just like, whatever. He's like, I heard what you did. It was really bad, but I really want my girl back. I really want her back. And it's like, this is weird. Like, he's not angry or anything. He's just like, why'd you do that? It wasn't cool. Why'd you do that? You could even speculate that that's why they cast him. Like, they could have cast any of these other bodybuilders. They might have been able to do a little bit better of a job in that scene. I mean, I thought that he was the best actor in the movie, though, myself. And so, all those vampiric comparisons I thought were very interesting. the last thing that I will talk about, and I know that this is kind of disappointing, but keep in mind, this movie is it's paper thin. The last thing is that apparently Tony Curtis did not like this movie at all, and he thought it was a huge piece of crap. And he said that he only agreed to be in the movie because they let him have some sort of a profit percentage or something. So he did not even like the movie himself, and so I kind of feel bad for criticizing him because I had thought that, that he really, I don't know, like I can't stand it in these movies when they get these like older men characters and they're like the leads, and they're like fawning over these young women, and they're, like, I just can't stand it because it's like if they're good, it comes off really great, like with Tom Cruise kinda, or maybe Brad Pitt. But if you have somebody like Tony Curtis, it just comes off as like, ugh, or Jerry Lewis, ugh. But I do think that Tony Curtis is a good actor. Last year I watched him in this movie. I can't remember what it was called, but it was a boxing movie, and it was pretty good, and it actually ended with him losing, and then it just ends with him being a good loser, like a man, and not throwing a temper tantrum and hitting the other opponent like I saw with this video that popped up. There's this wrestling teenagers or something, and one of them lost, and he punched the other guy in the face and knocked him out. I thought, God, this is, it really just shows you something about, like, these are the types of people that the modern films, these are the people that they cater to, because they're told that they can never lose. They're told that they can never struggle with anything. Everything has to be like just easy, and I think that that's kind of the point of this movie as well, in a way, is that don't make waves. Maybe it's just another form of saying, like, don't make things harder for yourself by doing bad things. Like, don't scheme and scam your way into a relationship just because you have this woman named Malibu. Don't do things like that, and then it'll lead to a better life, like fucking California's Big Boy contest winner Harry. So that's what I kind of think the message of the movie is. Other than that, I'm done with this movie. I swear, I am done with Don't Make Waves. Like, I will never, ever, 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 ever talk about this movie ever again. Even at the end of the year, when I'm doing my top 10 worst movies of the year, top 10 worst old movies of the year, I am going to say number blank is Don't Make Waves. Moving on, that's what I'm going to do, because I'm so sick of this movie. Like, I've been sick, and I've been watching movies like Toy Story 1 and 2, Back to the Future 1 and 2. I was thinking about watching Spider-Man, and, they make you feel really good, and they take your mind off of being sick, and, they make things so much better because they're good movies. But then you watch a movie like this, and it just makes, like, being sick even worse, and it just makes you feel like, oh, God, I don't want to watch this at all, please, no. I don't want to watch fucking Tony Curtis with this, and the way that they have him dressed, too. Like, at the end of the movie, they give him this fucking cap, and it's this terrible cap, and it looks so awful. It's like, who does this guy think he is? Who does he think he's impressing with the stupid outfits on that he wears? Yeah. And then another thing I didn't talk about is Cynthia from Beverly Hillbillies. You know, she plays the wife of the guy who's cheating on her with the main Italian woman. And, you know, there's not really much symbolism with her, surprisingly. You know, I assumed that her being in this movie would have some sort of a higher meaning that, you know, would be really integral to the movie. But she's really hardly in it. You know, she's in it for like 5 minutes. She's in it like even less than Sharon. So, anyways, please like this video, comment, tell me what you think about. I really that skydiver who died for this movie, that's just terrible. I mean, even if it was an accident, that's a little bit less terrible because, you know, at least he is pretty cool. The fact that he was able to get all the footage that they needed, it's like, that's pretty cool. He did a pretty cool thing by not just throwing the camera off in a way, because they said that he might have been able to survive if he had just thrown away the camera and the camera helmet, and he said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to sacrifice myself for this movie. And yeah, I just feel like he needs to be talked about more, and the story of that happening, you know, that needs to be, I mean, I have no idea. It's like nobody even talks about that at all. I'm probably the only YouTuber in the history of YouTube who has mentioned this guy's name or the story of him mysteriously. Nobody knows what happened to him. You know, like he just blew away, guys. Like he was in the air and he just blew away. And then he magically fell into the water and drowned. And the camera was perfectly, oh. You have to wonder what really happened there. That's very fishy, to say the least. And then please subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more videos like this. Next month will be Fearless Vampire Killers, and I hope it will lead to a more positive experience than the hell that was reviewing and watching this movie, Don't Make Waves. And I just like to give the audience a suggestion. Don't make waves, and then don't watch Don't Make Waves. Please, please. Just forget about this movie. Forget it ever existed. Pretend like it is a thing of the past. Pretend like, you know, instead of canceling Roald Dahl, instead of canceling Tolkien, cancel Don't Make Waves, and you'll be happy. So goodbye, everybody. See you soon.